Well, hey, all you cool cats and kittens out there. It's Carol's Big Cat Rescue, and welcome to U.S. history. Folks, that was a little inside joke for all of you who happen to be watching Tiger King on Netflix. What a ride that is. But in case not, let's move on. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about a chapter of United States history that is rarely talked about, but is really important, and also it's just really cool. For example, we're going to talk about the Pirate Wars. Hey, what be a pirate's favorite letter? You might be answering R, in which case I would say I, but its first true love be the sea. Ha! Nothing like some pirate humor. Very nice. That's right, folks. Many people don't actually know that the first proper war the United States was involved with, as we were a country, was with North African pirate terrorist type people under the leadership of Thomas Jefferson. It's a really cool part of history that is often glossed over because the War of 1812 followed it shortly, and that usually gets more attention. But it's important that we study it because studying the Pirate War or the Barbary Wars, as seen right here, it tells us a lot about Thomas Jefferson and his contradictions, right? Jefferson, of course, being a Republican, doesn't really want war. He wants small government. He does not want to empower the federal government. However, when he's in charge, he's going to contradict himself many times. And we will soon see that's kind of a hallmark of his presidency and presidents in general. So let's talk about Jefferson versus the pirates, aka the Barbary Wars. All right, here we go. We're diving deep into U.S. history here. This is the deep cuts, not the greatest hits. Okay. American ships faced a threat from the Barbary states of North Africa. The threat that they faced was piracy or robbery at sea. Now, what are the Barbary states? We're going to list them right here. So, for years, pirates from modern day countries of Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, all right, these were called the Barbary states then. To be fair, Tripoli is not a modern state, it's a city. Okay. They preyed on United States merchant ships entering the Mediterranean Sea. So, as you know, the U.S. were very involved with some trade. I should mention this is before the Embargo Act goes into effect, right? So, we're still trading all over, as the Embargo Act has not gotten into effect yet. And there's all these quasi terrorist pirate states, small independent kingdoms that keep raiding our ships. Now, this is kind of like state sponsored terrorism that we see today. Like how today the United States deals with many different Middle Eastern terrorist groups, like ISIS, or the Taliban, or Al Qaeda, or Al Shabaab in Africa. And these groups are run by these strongman type military leader figures, essentially gangs and with their thugs. That's kind of what's going on in North Africa at this time. There's a bunch of tribes, and they're all trying to become powerful. They're kind of breaking away from the Ottoman Empire, and there's some of them are still kind of vassals under the control of the Ottoman Empire, but they're just completely let loose, and they are attacking not only American ships trading in the area, but these different groups are also attacking European ships. And it's really messing with trade. Now, this problem is not new to Jefferson. In fact, it had been going on for quite some time. Both Presidents Washington and Adams paid tribute to the Barbary state rulers, the pirate rulers, in exchange for safety of American ships. The presidents had other issues to worry about instead of fighting pirate wars. Right? You remember, we studied Washington's presidency and Adams' presidency, and both of those presidencies, we nearly went to war with France. There's a lot of issues going on at home. We don't want to spend the money on a military. So Washington and Adams thought, you know what? We don't want to go to war. It's easier to pay these guys off. So say some pirates from Tripoli, they demand a ship pay like a couple $1,000s for safe passage. Washington and Adams were like, you know what? Fine, whatever. We have bigger fish to fry than to deal with this. However, by the time Jefferson gets to be president, the United States had paid the Barbary states around $2 million, which is a lot of money. And Jefferson, he's starting to have enough. He's saying, you know what? I don't want to pay this tribute anymore. So Jefferson is going to choose to take a more hands-on approach and be the first United States president to send United States military overseas to fight in a conflict. Okay, won't be the last, clearly, but he will be the first. Let's take a look at a map really quick. This is the area we're talking about here, all right? So the Barbary states are going to be around this area. They're not going to be too inland Africa, all right? They're going to be along the coast in the Mediterranean. And again, these are different groups. So you might have one pirate country state thing here, one here, and a couple over here, okay? So keep that in mind. It's not just one group of pirates. These are, I use the word states, but these couldn't really be considered countries at that time. They're very loosely organized and mostly just run kind of like mobs or gangs. I'll get rid of my drawings here. All right, so this is a zoom out on the map. The map we just showed kind of showed this area. So we're talking about North Africa. And again, this is an important part because if the United States is trading with Italy, Greece, for example, our ships need to come in through here and go through this area. And the pirates are attacking them left and right. So let's talk about this hashtag pirate war. You can use that one, you can keep that. So things really start to go bad when the ruler of Tripoli, which is shown right here, which is a modern-day city in Libya, but at this time it was completely under control of this one certain pirate, he's going to demand more tribute. And to show he was serious, he declares war on the United States. Now, let me clarify something really quick. The United States already paid tribute under previous administrations to this pirate king. However, he's saying, you know what? We want more. The amount you paid in the past, that deal is no good. You need to pay us more money. And again, he declares war on the United States. This is a huge deal. This is the first time that a foreign power declared war on us. Now, keep in mind, they're not really a country, so I'm not saying this is the first time a foreign country declares war on us. It's really like this would be like ISIS declaring war on the United States today. It's a group of thugs, terrorists, pirates, whatever you want to call them, but still, it's a pretty big detail, and you can't ignore it. We have someone who's declaring war on us. They're not going to stop anytime soon. Jefferson can't ignore it. Now, here's his dilemma. Jefferson hates war, as you know, but he also hates paying tribute, and he thought the United States has paid too much in tribute. $2 million is too much. So the logic being is it might be an expensive endeavor to go fight and defeat these pirates, but then we won't have to pay any more tribute ever in the future. And that's a pretty big deal. So Jefferson does something that's very un-Jeffersonian, and he chooses conflict. After all, think about it. These pirates were not really a threat to the American homeland, unlike Britain and France. So this is a pretty low-risk conflict Jefferson's going to fight. Notice I say conflict, not war. Jefferson never officially declares war on the pirates. Now, again, this is a low-risk conflict because all the fighting is going to take place in North Africa. This might sound odd that Jefferson chooses to fight because he didn't want to fight Britain, he didn't want to fight France, but keep in mind, if you declare war on England and France, there's a good chance England and France, because they are extremely large, powerful empires, they could invade the United States, and that would go very, very poorly. Choosing conflict and essentially choosing war with these pirates is zero risk to the American homeland. This isn't like modern day terrorism where they can come here and do state sponsored terror in the United States. It was much different back then, all right? So all the fighting is going to take place here in North Africa. The pirates aren't going to be able to invade the United States. So Jefferson is looking around and he's going, you know what? You want war, pirates? Fine. We'll bring some war to you. Most American lives will not be harmed at home at all. So again, this shows Jefferson being a pretty smart leader here, understanding that someone declares war on the United States. You can't just sit by and let them do that and keep harassing our ships. We have to do something, and this is zero risk. Unlike today, where if you're fighting a war with ISIS, for example, the way that travel works, it's pretty easy for and ISIS terrorists to either come here and do an attack or to use the internet to inspire people here to carry out terrorist attacks. That's not going to happen at this time. There are many similarities to what Jefferson is doing here to what the Bush, Obama, and Trump administrations have done in the Middle East fighting terrorists. But that is one of the big differences here. There's not going to be any attacks on U.S. soil. Now, in 1802, Jefferson sends a small fleet of warships to the Mediterranean to protect American shipping interests. And there's going to be some naval skirmishes and there's going to be some naval battles. Here's the point, folks. I want to emphasize something. The point was not to invade the land and to completely take out the pirates. The point is to just defend American trade, right? So Jefferson at this time, it's not really war, it's just protection. He's saying, all right, we have these trading ships, we're going to send the Navy in there, which is not too big at this time. Remember, it's 6 frigates and a bunch of gunboats. All right, so just want to emphasize that. Jefferson's like, we're not going to, at this point yet, excuse me, folks, we're not going to send in the Marines and totally invade this land and set up a puppet state. No, no, no. We're just sending in the Navy to defend those shipping routes. That's all he's doing. Okay? Now, eventually, it's going to evolve to the point where Jefferson is going to have to send in the Marines and invade Tripoli and other areas. But at first, he's saying, we're just going to protect our ships. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. And keep in mind, American ships were being on the defensive here. We were not attacking these pirate ships unless they were attacking us. So again, Jefferson's like, I don't like war, but I need to protect our trade. So we're gonna, if we're fired upon, we'll bring the heat, so to speak. Now, here's the problem, right? Of course, in 1804, some of these American captains in the Navy get a little, they get a little uppity, and they start actually bombarding the city of Tripoli with their cannons, which really starts to upset the pirates, right? Because at this point, things get a little offensive. Notice the date. This is 2 years later after 1802 when he sends the ships, okay? So we're starting to now shoot at their homeland. And then something really bad happens for the United States. There's a ship called the USS Philadelphia, and it ran aground at a hidden reef in a harbor near Tripoli. And the captain and the crew were captured by the pirates and held for ransom. Dun, dun, dun! The plot thickens. All right, this is not good for the United States. Now this pirate king, this terrorist pirate king, this Barbary state person, he has American sailors and he's holding them for ransom. This looks really, really bad, and something needs to get done. And something does get done. This is when Jefferson decides to send in the Marines and invade Tripoli. You might, if you've ever been around, if you have any military people in your family, you might know the song of the Marines. Every single branch of the military has a theme song, right? The Marines is da 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 da. Maybe it sounds familiar. And one of those lines is, to the shores of Tripoli. That's what this is talking about. This is the first time the Marines are used in overseas combat, and it's mentioned in the Marines theme song. Pretty cool there. So what happens is, Stephen Decanter, who is a leader at this time, and the Marines, they led a raiding party into the heavily guarded Tripoli harbor, and they set the Philadelphia ship afire instead of letting the pirate kings use the ship to their advantage. Let's keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the pirates captured the ship. Yes, it ran a reef. The ship ran aground at this reef, but the pirates captured it and were making repairs. And this is really, really bad because this essentially means that the pirates were planning on using this American naval ship with its modern technology and its huge cannons to attack U.S. ships. The pirate ships that the pirates were using weren't nearly as powerful as our Navy frigates, right? So this would be like in modern times if the terrorists got their hands on like a nuclear submarine and they were going to use it against us. It's a big deal. So Jefferson's like, look, we got to get this ship back. We can't let the pirates have this super powerful frigate and use its guns and weapons against us. Again, this would be like if terrorists today got their hands on a submarine. Really, really bad stuff. So Stephen Decanter and the Marines, they invade Tripoli. There's this really awesome battle, and they set fire to the ship because they don't have enough time. They were supposed to bring the ship back, but they didn't. And the fighting was too heavy at that time. So they say, you know what? We're gonna burn the ship, and they recapture the imprisoned American sailors. Okay, so now this is like a war. Now we are invading land, and it moves from a defensive to an offensive conflict. So something to keep in mind for this slide, ladies and gentlemen, is that at first Jefferson, he's not calling in a war. He's just going to send in the Navy to protect our ships. All right, we will attack the pirates if they attack us. But as that evolves, now we're invading land, and now it pretty much is a war. Although it should be noted, Jefferson still does not officially declare war at this time. All right, now, this is a painting, an artist depiction of the invasion of Tripoli, right? Notice you see the Marines here in blue. You got some dead pirates right over here from the Barbary States. And look, you have the wonderful Tripoli Harbor, North African buildings. It's a really cool conflict. Lots of great videos on this conflict. There's a great book called The Barbary Pirates, all right? It's really cool, an often overlooked piece of U.S. history. So we're going to wrap this up quickly here. So here's how the problem ends up getting solved. After the raids of Tripoli and other attacks, and months of the U.S. attacks and blockades, the Tripoli pirates finally sign a peace treaty with the United States in the year 1805. They give up, and this was always going to happen. They are a small, rambunctious little state that was never going to win a war against the United States, which, to be fair, was a lot smaller and weaker than it is now, but it happened. So Tripoli agrees to stop demanding tribute payments and to leave United States ships alone. This is a huge victory for Jefferson, and it makes Thomas Jefferson extremely popular. He won. He's the first president to send the American Navy and the Marines overseas and win a conflict. So you could even say this is a precedent Jefferson is setting. We went overseas and we won. It won't happen every time. Looking at you, Korean and Vietnam War and the current wars in the Middle East, by some expect, but he did a pretty good job. And we don't have to pay tributes to these pirates anymore, and we're going to be able to trade in peace. I will point out that other pirate groups are still going to be harassing U.S. ships from time to time, although a little less because they're kind of worried about it. And this whole pirate problem in North Africa really wouldn't be solved until around 1815, when a combination of European and American forces go in there and end it once and for all. But this ends most of the problem for the United States. Now, again, this is a deal. So what the United States says they're going to do is we're going to pay $600,000, which for the ransom for the crew of Philadelphia. Earlier, I said that the crew got captured back by the Marines. Not all the crew did, just a couple of them. They still had some sailors, right? So the U.S. is going to pay $6,000 for the ransom of the crew of the USS Philadelphia, which may seem like a lot, but originally the pirates were demanding $3 million for the crew, which is just crazy to think about because at the time Thomas Jefferson became president, the United States had paid $2 million total to all the pirates for the tribute. So this is a little extreme here. So the U.S. is like, we'll pay you guys $60,000 for the rest of those sailors, and you're not going to get any more tribute from us. And it works out pretty well. Again, from time to time, other North African pirates would harass U.S. ships, but this really solves the problem for us for a while. Okay, now let's talk about the significance of this and what this means for Jefferson. Now, this is an example of the conflicting nature of Thomas Jefferson. Later on, when we come back from spring break, we're going to talk about Thomas Jefferson and slavery. And to foreshadow that and to use this as an example, the dude is a walking, talking paradox. He's a very complicated human being to understand, and he is very conflicting between what he believes in and what he actually does, which is pretty easy to understand. He is human, and he's a politician. Most of them do this, right? But Jefferson is a very complicated person. So here's the example, right? He hates war, and he mainly hates war because it expands the power of the president. But he decides to do war anyway. Again, this is actually kind of wrong here. He doesn't really declare war on the pirates, but what he does is actually a war. And this does end up expanding the power of the presidency. Jefferson sent in the Navy and the Marines independently without congressional approval. This is not how it was supposed to work. As you know, Congress is the one who's supposed to declare war or to declare conflicts. But Jefferson doesn't do that. He expands the power of the presidency by deciding to unilaterally, which means all by himself, to send in the Navy and to send in the Marines. Now, Congress does like it, and Congress does support what Jefferson does, and they approve Jefferson's actions after the fact to send in the Navy and the Marines, and this makes it okay. All right? However, if Congress didn't support it, there would be a constitutional crisis. Jefferson could say, I'm sending in the Marines and the Navy. He starts to send them. Congress could have said, Jefferson, we don't think you should do that. It's kind of up to us to do these conflicts, so we're going to veto that. And then we have a crisis. What's the Navy supposed to do? After all, Jefferson is the commander-in-chief, but remember, checks and balances, Congress is supposed to give approval, right? So here Jefferson expands the power of the presidency by deciding to send in the military all by himself with zero congressional approval. Congress eventually does approve it, all right? But again, Jefferson's a Republican. He does not want a powerful central government, and he is essentially making the central government by doing it this way. Jefferson didn't really want to go to Congress and to ask for them to declare war on the pirates because he thought, well, you can't really do that. They're not a proper country. But if he truly believed in small government, he would have done it this way. All right? Now, again, this is the paradox of Jefferson. He fears a powerful federal government unless he is the one in charge of it, right? And this is a classic politician thing to do. Government has too much power, government shouldn't be doing the things it's doing, and that politician gets in power and he does those things. Another example of this would be the Louisiana Purchase, which we talked about last week. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say the president can purchase land, but Jefferson used loose construction to do it, right? That's a paradox. In the past, Jefferson feared a powerful government. He said he was a strict constructionist, saying you can only do what the Constitution says you can do. But once he gets in power, he says, but you know what? I trust myself. I'm a Republican. I'm a good guy. I'm not going to abuse the powers for evil. And it could be considered hypocritical in a sense, but it's also a classic power move. All right, Jefferson fears powerful federal government unless he's the one doing it. The problem with this is, yes, Jefferson, but you're not going to be president forever. And one day, presidents are going to look back and say what you did is an example that they can do something, and you might not trust them, Jefferson. So by saying, oh, it's okay if I do it, that's not good, because someone in the future could use that as an example. And presidents would do that. When deciding to send troops to the Middle East, for example, the United States under Bush, we never really declared war in Iraq or Afghanistan. President Bush decided to do a military action on his own, and then later Congress did approve it, but he actually cited Jefferson and how he handled these Barbary pirates. So Bush said, well, Jefferson sent the troops in without officially declaring war, and Congress later approved it. I can do that too. So this is what I'm talking about with, you got to be careful by saying, well, it's okay if I do it, because Jefferson, you're not going to be the last president. So the man is a walking paradox. And again, in the end, this ended up working out. It makes Jefferson insanely popular. It mostly stops the tribute payments, and pirates start to leave the United States alone. But it unfortunately does expand the power of the presidency, which is not what Jefferson wanted to do. You might remember when Jefferson first came into office, he immediately starts to undo the legacy of the Federalists. He undoes the legacy of strong central government by cutting the military budget in half, getting rid of most of the Treasury Department. But over the course of his presidency, Jefferson actually ends up doing some pretty Federalist-y things, and this is an example of them. All right, folks, that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching this video. I'm going to have you watch this video, which kind of explains Jefferson and his constitutional powers and the Pirate Wars a little bit more. And then there's going to be some questions for you to answer on teams. But you know what? After you finish those, you're on spring break for social studies, ladies and gentlemen. That's the last thing I'm going to have you do until we come back from spring break. So I wish that you have a good one. And I hope you get outside and get some sunshine because it's a nice looking day today and tomorrow. All right, ladies and gentlemen, good luck on your homework. Feel free to watch this video other times to go back and look at some of the things in there. Okay, I will see you folks later. Goodbye.